L'evento si terrà in lingua inglese, ma potrete seguire la traduzione, realizzata con l'intelligenza artificiale, direttamente dal vostro smartphone. Vi rubo qualche secondo per spiegarvi come funziona. Per prima cosa, prendete il vostro smartphone e inquadrate il codice QR che vedete nel video. In questo modo potrete scaricare sul vostro cellulare la app di Interprefy con cui viene gestita la traduzione. Vi lascio ancora un secondo per inquadrare il codice QR. Dopo aver scansionato il codice QR, si aprirà l'app. Scrivete iTranslation, in minuscolo e tutto attaccato, nel riquadro al centro e fate tap sulla scritta Connect in basso. Questa è la vostra schermata operativa. Facendo tap in basso a sinistra, sulla scritta English indicata dal riquadro, si aprirà una schermata che vi permette di scegliere l'audio della lingua di preferenza, inglese o italiano. Usate le vostre cuffie e ascoltate la lingua originale o la versione tradotta dall'intelligenza artificiale. Facendo tap in basso a destra, sulla scritta CC indicata dal riquadro, potrete invece scegliere di attivare i sottotitoli e leggere la trascrizione della lingua originale o della lingua tradotta con l'intelligenza artificiale. Per uscire dalla app sarà sufficiente fare tap sul simbolo in alto a sinistra indicato dal riquadro e poi cliccare su Leave. Vi faccio vedere ancora una volta il codice QR per accedere all'app. La traduzione con intelligenza artificiale è in continuo sviluppo. Vi invitiamo a usare questo servizio per contribuire a migliorarlo. Grazie!
Welcome to the presentation meeting of the Trieste Next 2024. I'm Sophia, and as you might have noticed, I'm an AI-generated avatar. Today, I'll present you this edition of the festival. Over the next 3 days, we will explore the horizons of intelligence. This is the theme of the 13th edition of the Scientific Research Festival. At Trieste Next, we will discuss both human and artificial intelligence, ethical boundaries, and the new frontiers science is facing. Where will artificial intelligence take us? What impact will it have on research? Medicine, robotics, astrophysics, food and nutrition, and the environment are just a few of the scientific fields we will delve into at Trieste Next. This is the central theme of Trieste Next, featuring over 100 events in English and Italian, the Literary Award for the Scientific Book of the Year, and 70 activities for schools. More than 300 internationally renowned speakers will be in Trieste. And don't forget to visit the 40 exhibition spaces and open labs in Piazza Unita. Before we welcome the guests of the next event, on behalf of the organizers and co-organizers, I would like to thank all the scientific institutions of Trieste, City of Knowledge, as well as the institutions that collaborated with us. A special thanks goes to the festival's main partner, the partners, and content partners for their crucial contributions. Thanks also to the media and technical partners. Lastly, a heartfelt thanks to the 200 volunteers who made this edition possible. One final note. I'd like to remind you that the next session will last 75 minutes, with the final 15 minutes dedicated to your questions. Please also remember to check the updated event schedule on www.triestenext.t, which you can access via the QR code. Enjoy the event and have a great festival.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to our AI friends. Thank to our audience. Thank you for joining us. Very welcome here in Trieste. My name is Rossana Santolin. I'm a journalist, and I'm very pleased to welcome tonight a guest of Trieste Next, who have been at Trieste Next for the first time maybe 11 years ago. So you're quite used to, you know Trieste very well, much better than me. Professor Jan Olof Lundqvist is a world-renowned expert in the interrelationship that there is between water, food, and nutrition security. He's a senior scientific advisor at the Stockholm International Water Institute, an active, very active contributor and researcher of the Swedish Royal Academy of Agriculture and Forestry Activities, and he gained a lot of experience across several countries in Asia, in Africa. And last year, you published The Perfect Storm, Water, Food, and 8 Billion Consumers, edited by Post Editori, which will be the focus of our little chat tonight. So very welcome, Professor Lundqvist, here in Trieste.
Grazie mille. Thank you very, very much, Rossana.
Thank you. So I want really to kick into your book, The Perfect Storm, which, you know, this title really catches the attention. There is a very clear reference to the movie The Perfect Storm, you know, maybe the movie with George Clooney. Have anybody watched it? Nobody. They're very young people in the audience. That's great. There's no happy ending, so I'm sorry for the spoiler. But it's a great movie. I really suggest it. And I think it's a great title because humanity went through many challenges, many storms in its history. But now we're facing this perfect storm. Why is that so perfect? And is the combination of many factors? Why is that? What do we have ahead of us?
Yes, thank you, Rossana. Let me first add to your previous introduction. I think most of you probably are aware of the French connection, the mafia in France, and that you should stay away from that kind of connection. But I think I prefer the Italian connection. That is a fantastic connection for me. As Rossana mentioned, I've been to Trieste Next the first time in 2013. I've been a couple of times afterwards, and in other parts of Italy also. And Italy is fantastic. And the team I've been collaborating with for this book, and in these different meetings, Antonio Macconi, I'm not quite sure who's here, Roberta, who is taking care of the library in Padua, all fantastic people. And now Rossana. We had a fantastic introductory discussion about a week ago over digital communication. So let me thank you and the organizers. It's a great, great pleasure to be here. Now, to your question about what is the not only the Italian connection, but what is the connection, the linkages between the issues that I deal with in this book, what I call the perfect storm. And as Rossana mentioned, the background is a true story that happened outside the coast of Nova Scotia. I think it was 1996. And it was the confluence or the combination of different meteorological and weather conditions. Is it okay if I speak like this?
Yes, it's fine.
I had the phone correctly. Yeah, okay. So the background for this concept is that there was a fisherman's boat outside the coast of Nova Scotia in 1996. They had been informed about, to some extent, about the serious weather situation, but I don't know to what extent they overlooked it or if they misjudged it. But they went out for a fishing trip, and they were met with a tremendous storm, which was actually the confluence between different meteorological and oceanographic phenomena. So there was a storm coming from the south and then from the north. And these two weather phenomena, they met just where the fisher boat was sailing. Now, so this is the meaning of the perfect storm, that there are different types of forces that are, the synergy of these forces make the effect very, very serious. Now, I'm not dealing with the oceanographic or the weather phenomena as such in this book. But what I am dealing with, and I am sure that Susanna will go into details later on, but I think that most of all of you and all the people in the world, more or less, they now are quite aware of the fact that we are in a similar or kind of a corresponding perfect storm situation. We have a anthropogenic warming, a heating up of the Earth system as well as the atmosphere. We'll come back to that probably. And we have also, as I start with in the book, we have quite a dramatic demographic change in the world. I start in the book with a short story when my wife, Anna, who is here also with me, we went to Africa, to Tanzania in 1970. And at that time, the population in Tanzania was about 12 million people. Do you know how many people there are now? 60, 65. So if you compare the population increase in a country like Tanzania and in all African countries with what's happening in Italy, certainly in Sweden, and most of the European countries, it's a tremendous increase in the demographic situation in population. You know, the capital of Tanzania is called Dar es Salaam. It's on the Indian Ocean. It used to have 320,000 people when we were there, 1970, 72. Now it's about 6.5 million people. So there is a tremendous increase in population all around the world, and particularly in those parts of the world where water is a big problem and where the land is scarce, where fertile land is scarce, and where the institutional setting in governments is weak. And so it's a kind of perfect storm in the sense that we have a combination of these factors. And at the same time, people need food, they need water, they need a place to stay. So how do we manage? How can the governments, how can the private sector, the industry, the organization, how can we put these things together to solve the wishes of people to have a decent or even a better life? And that is the basis of my book. And I should also add that with reference to water, while the population has increased, the amount of water on Earth is the same. We have the same amount of water now as we had 100 years ago, as we had 1,000 years ago. The time of Jesus Christ, same amount of water. And it will be, in principle, it will be the same amount of water on Earth in the future. But the difference is that the circulation of water in the world is much, much faster as a result of the global warming. You have seen now in the last week and also the previous year that you have had tremendous storms in Italy. It started in this year. It started in Poland and Czech Republic, in Austria, called the Boris storm. And now Rossana was telling me that in your home area, in the
in Treviso, we have a huge problem with landslides, and last week half of the town went underwater because it rained so much. So all the quantity of rain that usually falls in 1 month,
that's right,
fell down in 3 hours.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So this is the kind of situation that we, as tourists, as researchers, whatever we are dealing with, we experience. And for most of us, we can cope. We can go inside. We can take the car maybe if we don't want to walk in the rain. But for farmers, for food production, it's not the case. You know, farming, our food security, is an activity that takes place in the landscape. If we talk with people who are dealing with the Po Authority based in Parma, you know, they have huge problem. How in Italy? How do we deal with this sudden rainfall? And as Rossana is saying, it's a combination between rainfall and landslides. I think you mentioned that you had about 400 landslides in
Yeah, on the
area.
Prosecco hills. There are
Yeah.
small landslides,
Yeah.
but like very spread around all the territory where Prosecco is produced.
Yeah, yeah. So this is I think this is a very concrete example of perfect storm, and the new thing, I think, if you look on the situation today, if compared with I think most of us, we have tended to think that the extreme weather events, storms, hurricanes, those kind of things, they happen elsewhere, in Africa, in Asia, and we had a big storm in Dubai a couple of months ago. There was water this amount, and it happens in Dubai. It has not happened before. In the coastline of Libya, north of Africa, I think it was some 1 or 2 years ago, I'm not quite sure, it was 2023 or 23, I think it was. A whole urban area was swept out into the Mediterranean Sea. In 2019, I think, I'm not quite sure about, maybe I have the wrong year now, but 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater, suddenly. They had temperature up to 50 degrees centigrade. And there were stories in the news, in the media, that the birds who used to fly in there, they were falling dead down on the ground. So the combination of the extreme heat and the heat will increase the turbulence in the winds and such things, and also the drying of the landscape. More water will come up from the soil and go up into the atmosphere. And I think it's one of the basic facts of that all colleagues agree upon, that for each degree of increased temperature, the atmosphere can absorb 7% more moisture. But that moisture, it will not stay in the atmosphere for very long. So the moisture in the atmosphere usually comes down within 1 week or 9 days. That's the average stay of the water. And that's how we can explain the extreme events, the heavy rainfalls, because there's so much water being sucked up from the land, and then it will circulate around the globe, and then it will fall down as heavy downpours, and creating havoc and landslides and destroying infrastructure and one thing. Sorry, I'm speaking too much.
No, it's great.
You can interrupt me. You can interrupt me or anybody here. It's as I said before, we have used to think that these kind of extreme weather phenomenon are examples from the tropical areas. I mean, in Asia or in Africa or in other parts of the world. But also in Sweden. In Sweden, we used to have very small variation in rainfall temperature. In 2018, that is 4 years ago, we had tropical nights, meaning that the temperature never went below 20 degrees. We had tropical nights for about 3 weeks. There was not a drop of rainfall in that period. So it was hot during the daytime, and it was warm and very nice during the nighttime for tourists, for us, but not for the farmers. It was so bad that, there were long queues to the slaughterhouses because the farmers didn't have enough of feed for the cattle. There was no feed in Sweden. We had to import from Holland, Germany to some extent. So what we see now, I think, is that these extreme events, they are also hitting us in in the parts of the world that used to be safe, that used to be rather normal. Now we're talking about the new normal. We have a weather situation. We had a kind of livelihood situation, I think one could say, that is different. And how do we deal with it, and who should deal with it? I think it's a tremendous task.
That is this new normal, and is not just about change, because we have been through many changes in our history. It's about the speed of change. Can you give us a bit of the measure of how fast this change is going?
Yes, there are some articles. If you look into the literature, there is a number of articles with the title "The Great Accelerations." So it was a colleague in Australia. He was working in Stockholm for some time. He's passed away now, unfortunately. But he collected information about different types of changes in society, about the increasing number of TV sets, the increasing number of cars, the increasing number of whatever. And you can see that from in the post-World War II period, these kind of trends have gone up, and they've gone up fast. And as we started also, the population curve. Now, if you look upon it historically, the population of the world was slowly increasing, and then it started like this. So I think that in many social, economic aspects, you can say the GDP of most countries in the world, the GDP has gone up very much faster than the population increase. It means that an average person in Italy or in Sweden, he or she has more money in their pockets to spend. And that's why also we see that this acceleration in terms of consumer goods, people are buying much more of different kind of things. And we should also then remember that all the things that we are buying, food, clothes, houses, travel, all of these kind of things that we are buying, spending our money on, they have consumed water, land, energy. So there is a kind of
vicious circle.
Vicious circle, right, yes, a feedback mechanisms. And as you say, these kind of circles, these kind of feedback mechanisms, they tend to go faster and faster.
And as you said earlier, agriculture is the sector that has been more affected by climate change. But you know, we can look at it by two different sides. So it's impacted by climate change, but still agriculture is one of the most impactful and contributing to emissions and water stress. So there's this duality about agriculture, how we get about it.
Yes, that's true. That is true. It's working in both directions, so to speak. So because in agriculture we need a lot of inputs. We need, among other, energy. The relative amount of energy that goes into agriculture as compared to industry, for heating of houses, such things, is global. It varies between different countries, of course. I don't know the figures for Italy, but globally about 1/3 of the total amount of energy is used for tractors, for harvesters, but also for fertilizers, to produce fertilizers. It's very energy intensive. That's how Russia, you know, if we buy fertilizers, quite a lot of that is produced by Putin. So there are, and then these there are also feedback mechanisms. So these kind of the use of energy and those kind of things in agriculture will of course be coming back as different kind of food products, and then I've written a lot about the waste problematic. We misuse to a very large extent the food that is produced. So although we have quite a surplus of food in the world today as compared to the requirement, but that is also can also be that's also a source of waste of people eating too much. So there are different types of. It's a very complex system where we have a number of inputs into the production system, into food, into industries, and we get of course different types of goods and services that we want. But we also tend to, I think we talked now during the dinner before here, that people in many parts of the world are a bit wasteful. We demand, we require much more food, much more clothing, much more such things, as compared to what this can be judged as reasonable. So,
well, just to put it in this perspective, the FAO calculated this this food loss and calculated that if food loss and waste were a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter on the planet after China, after US. So we waste 50% of the food we produce. Maybe we're not aware enough of this. How much water, how much soil, how many resources we could save if we wouldn't throw away or overeat half of this food.
Yes, that's true. I have figures, but maybe it's not, I don't need to present the figures here, but as you say, Rossana, it's if you look upon the world household, so to speak, as Rossana mentioned here, both FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome, and other research colleagues, and I've been involved with it myself also, we have estimated about a little bit more than 1/3 of the food that is produced is either lost or wasted. And lost food, it means that we have technical deficiency. They are due to transport, poor storage, such things. So that means that the food gets not fit for eating. So that is the loss of food. And then we have the waste of food, and the waste of food is defined as food that we throw away. We buy food, and then we don't eat it, or we don't eat all of it, and we throw it away in spite of the fact that it is safe to eat. So the combination of losses, the technical problem, and the consumer behavior, because that is very much a consumer behavior. Those two kind of conditions, together they are close to 40% of the food that is produced. And that means that an equivalent amount of water that went into production, energy that went into production, land that was used for production, that is also misused. So we have quite a low efficiency in the food system.
We should put like this water footprint label on the products that's an idea, don't steal it to me. Like a water footprint label on the products that we find on the shelves of our supermarket, exactly like the the carbon footprint, something similar, because we're really not aware of.
Yeah.
We're aware of the water we drink, but not the water we eat.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I think I've written about that. That we drink a couple of liters per person per day, 2 or 3 liters. That's the physiological kind of requirements. In tea or in coffee, beer or whatever it is. And also quite a lot of water is contained in cucumbers and melons, those kind of fruits. So I've written in the book that a cucumber contains more water, relatively speaking, as compared to the Mediterranean. Because a cucumber contains about 97% water. So if you dry a cucumber, put it into an oven or just let it be, it will be, from a big cucumber, it will be a small amount, you know. So now I got lost here, I think, but that is
no problem, because it's we have a very challenging mission to tackle this broad topic in 1 hour.
But you mentioned about this, if we should not put it on a label. I mean, if for the people who go to a shop to buy food, I think that was your question. Shouldn't there be a information on the back of the fruit or of the
meat?
Milk, meat, yes. A kilo of red meat. Do you know how much water is used to produce 1 kilo of red meat? Beef, such things? Anyone want to guess? 8,000 liters. Huh? 8,000. Yeah, you're halfway right. It's about 15 tons. That's the average. And now that doesn't mean that the cow or that the animal is drinking 15 tons. But it is to produce the fodder, the feed. And then it's not only the 15 tons of water for 1 kilo, but it's also the acreage. The largest land use on earth today is agriculture. But 40% of the land is used for agriculture. If you look upon the urban areas in the world, the transport system, railways, roads, all the infrastructure, houses, all those kind of things, it's about 1% of the world. So agriculture, our food system, is a tremendous, both in terms of acreage and in terms of water and in terms of energy, and still we are wasting quite a lot of the food that is produced. And not only wasting, we're also overeating. In Sweden, and I don't have the figures for Italy, sorry, but certainly in the United States and in many countries, even in poor countries, there is an overweight and obesity epidemics. So the number of people who are overeating and who have a too high intake of food is much higher as compared to the number of people who are undernourished. Think about that. That is a kind of symptom or kind of it's not a welfare country, but what is it's a huge kind of. It can't be. It's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. It's poor for our health, and it's poor for the environment, and it's poor for the climate. So I think we are in a situation where we need to pay more attention to the different kind of linkages between water, between human needs and wants, and how, as we have discussed, Rossana, it's a very complex system. We know that. It's a very complex system. And of course, in terms of policy, in terms of what can we do about it?
That's the big question.
That's a big, big question.
Yeah.
That's a big question. But I think that there's some... I can say a few things about it.
Absolutely, yeah. Go for it.
I think that we have to walk on two legs. One leg is about the reduction of the greenhouse gases, the carbon dioxide. It has to be, it must be go down, because the carbon dioxide, but also methane, other greenhouse gases, they are warming. They are all trapping the return of heat from the solar radiation coming into the Earth. So they act as a kind of cushion, a kind of carpet, blocking the return flow of the heat back into atmosphere. But there's another circle which is very closely related to water, namely, as I mentioned before here also, that the higher temperature means that there's more moisture, more vapor. And the water vapor in the atmosphere is the most active greenhouse gas. So I think most of you probably have heard about the carbon dioxide, the methane, those kind of greenhouse gases. But those gases, in turn, are the very driving force for the increasing evaporation and transpiration of water from vegetation, from the earth, into the atmosphere.
That is very interesting, because we usually just think about the CO2, but not about vapor.
That's right, yes.
So all the water that we have above our head, and that is contributing to this.
It is.
It's called effetto serra in Italian.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So if there had not been any water vapor in the atmosphere, it's also good in a sense, because if there had not been a water vapor in the atmosphere, the temperature on the Earth would have been about 30 degrees lower. So in a sense, we need the water vapor. We need a certain amount of greenhouse gases to keep the Earth livable. So what has happened now is that there is an imbalance. Through human activities, the burning of fossil fuels primarily, but also the irrigation, the rice fields, they are also, from the rice fields, methane gases are being emitted back to the atmosphere. So those kind of greenhouse gases, they are the drivers for the increased circulation of the water. And as I mentioned before here, for each degree increased temperature, the atmosphere can absorb 7% more of water. Most of that will come down, but it depends on the different particles. I mean, rainfall, water vapor is the only condensable greenhouse gas. I mean, the water vapor will, when you have condensation kernels, I don't know if that's the proper English word.
Condensation?
Huh?
Condensation?
Yes, I mean, then if depending on the particles in their temperature, such things, there will be condensation, and you have the rainfall. Yes, but the other gases, the carbon dioxide, the methane, they do not condense. They will stay in the air. So carbon dioxide will stay in the atmosphere for hundreds, even for thousands of years. So what people have been putting up in the atmosphere in terms of carbon dioxide, especially carbon dioxide, it will stay in the atmosphere. The methane, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas, it will decompose gradually after about 10, 12 years. Then it is, they're different. I'm not too familiar with those kind of things, but But carbon dioxide will remain in the atmosphere for hundreds, even for thousands of years. The other gases for 12 years, like methane. The other gases, there are different time periods. But the water, there's an increase of water in the atmosphere, but that will also come down then as extreme events, as storms, as heavy rainfall pattern. So complex is the word to describe
it. It is very complex. And what I found interesting about the book is that we usually think of fresh water. We link it to rivers and lakes, but there's so much water above our head. And of course, you mentioned all the vapor and that is coming from the soil. And then how much water there is underground. So what do you think about new ways to source fresh water from the ground? Is that sustainable? Like worst scenario, we can't have water. We have a severe drought situation. How far can we go down in the ground and take water from the soil? Is that sustainable? I mean, many countries are doing that.
Yeah, it's very good. Thank you for taking this up, I think, Rossana. This is because the amount of, if you take the whole Earth, we talk about the planet Earth, but it should also be called the planet water, because 70% of the planet's surface is water. Now, also, if you look upon if you go below the surface, of the fresh water. Fresh water is what we can drink, what we can use for cooking, what we need in industry and those kind of things. That's the fresh water, without the salts, the diluted salts, such things. But the main part on the globe is, of course, salty water or brackish water. We have brackish water, for instance, in the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Finland, or Sweden and the Baltic countries. Now, your question about the groundwater, it's a huge resource. And in some parts of the world, it's the principal source of water for people. And in some parts of the world, it's the only source of water. Like in the so-called Nubian area, in an area in the south of Egypt, Chad, Sudan, and one more country, 4 countries. They have a huge volume of fossil water. That is water that was created during a previous geological period. And it's a huge volume of water. In this area, there are about 170, 180 million people living on top of this fossil reservoir. They don't have any rainwater. There's no rain over Sahara today. And those in historical times, I mean, that's why we have water in the fossil aquifers. So, to your question, I think that in that part of Africa, I mean, they have 2 sources. They have the Nile, and they have the fossil water, primarily. The Nile is increasingly used by people in downstream countries. Ethiopia is building a big dam on the Blue Nile. And the people in the downstream areas, they have the first take on water. They are close to the source, so their population is growing, so they want to use more water. So for Northern Africa, it's a tricky situation. So from where do they get the water? So one source is the groundwater, as you say, Rossana. And then I've written in the book also about the India, which is a huge country now. The population in India is about 1.4 billion people. And they, you're probably, some of you have heard about the huge famines, starvation, such things in India in the 60s and the 70s. People died from lack of food. It was a huge problem. There were 400 million people. Now
400 million.
I mean,
they died.
There was not enough of food to feed 400 million people. So then they had. It was not only enough of food produced, but it was also the lack of access. I mean, the political system, the economic political system. Made that certain fractions of the population, they did not have access to the food. They were too poor. Due to the caste system, they were cut out and such things. Now India is having a surplus of food. And they are exporting food. But at the cost of groundwater exploitation. So India, you might have heard about the Green Revolution, which was introduced in the 1960s, started in Mexico, and then it took off in South Asia, India, Pakistan, those areas, not in China. America didn't want China to have this technology. They were a communist country. They shouldn't have that, you know. But anyway, they introduced the Green Revolution, which was a high-yielding varieties. They could produce much, much more food, but they needed water to produce the food. And for the farmers in large part of India, they didn't have the rivers. There was no water in the surface. So they had to go for the water in the ground. So in southern part of India, I've been working in Tamil Nadu, that's in the south of India. We have seen that the groundwater level has been reduced in some areas by almost 1 meter per year during the last 30, 40 years. So it goes down, down, down. There's still water, but to lift the water, you require much more energy. Not only more energy, you need very powerful pump sets. And the poor farmers cannot afford the expensive pump sets. So the groundwater is a huge reservoir in many parts of the world. It's the only reservoir in some parts of the world. It will not be finished. There will be groundwater for hundreds, for thousands of years, I think. But there will be a cost in terms of energy to lift the water. There will be investments in terms of pump sets. And there will be land subsidies, subsidization.
Yeah, subsidence.
Yeah, so when the water is pumped up, the soil will be
Goes
compressed.
Down, yes.
And then there will be no water coming back, you know.
So, if I got it right, it's sustainable, but in part. So at a certain point, it became unsustainable. So pumping water from fresh water from underground, and this summer in Sicily, there was a renewed debate about desalination. There was a huge problem with drought. It was a very, very hot summer. And they started to desalinize water. What do you think about it? Is that sustainable, or are we on the same track as underground water?
I think, well, it's a bit different, I think, but the desalinization of seawater is energy intensive. And it's, you know, I think it's in Israel, in the Mediterranean, in Israel, in South Africa, in California, and in some other places, they can desalinize seawater for household purposes, for industry. But to desalinize seawater for agriculture is another story. Because the amount of water required for desalinization of water to agriculture requires huge amounts of water, you know. So if you take agriculture is an area covering huge areas. I mean, in industry, you can have the water within walls. You can recirculate the water, but you can't do that in agriculture. So you have, if you should go for desalinization, you need huge volumes of water, and then you also have the problem with the brine, because the salt. When you desalinize it, you have still the salt, the brine.
You have to stock it somewhere.
You have to
Dig it underground and then consuming more soil.
Could be, yes.
It's the perfect storm.
It is.
Exactly like the movie, there's no happy ending so far. Let's see, we still have 23 minutes to find an happy ending to this story.
Yeah.
Professor Lundqvist, there is another very interesting part of your book where you get into this more crop per drop index. Why is that so important now that we're going towards a population growth of 10 millions in 50 years probably will be
probably, yes.
10 billions.
10 to 11.
10 billions.
I mean, some projections.
Why is it so important to become more efficient with our agricultural system?
I think it's important for maybe several reasons, but it's more crop per drop, but I would also say more yield, higher production per unit area. Because because agriculture is a very, it takes a lot of land. And if you don't increase crop per drop, and if you don't increase the productivity, the yield, then agriculture will go into natural ecosystems. There's no other way. So we used to say that the Green Revolution, which was the introduction of high-yielding varieties, it was an increase in productivity, not so much in terms of water crop per drop, but it was an increase in area productivity. So I think it's a combination between we have to produce more crop per each water drop, because there is not enough of water to waste with the water. So for countries having very little amount of water, they must produce more food and much industrial goods for each drop. If the population is growing, and if we want more of industrial goods, if we want more of different types of items, we have to increase productivity. We have to increase efficiency. It's either that or we reduce the wastage. You can produce more or you can waste less. I think in principle, it's very difficult to find a third solution. That is the way it is. And the crop per drop, yes, I think that is, but it's not only, I think it is a combination between crop per drop and the area productivity, but it's also how the farmers and others are combining the different inputs in agriculture and in industry and so on. There are studies, for instance, from African countries and in other parts of the world also, that show that the farmers are not combining water, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides. They're not combining those kind of inputs in a proper manner. So that means if you are aiming at more crop per drop, you can do it. I think you need to do it by also looking on the other inputs. It's water together with other inputs. So if you combine water with fertilizers, with good soil management, then you get more crop per drop and more crop per acre area. So crop per drop is a very nice concept, but it is not telling the full truth, I think.
Maybe politics should do something. Maybe we need some strict rules that force it maybe is not the right word, farmers to do things in a proper way, to be more efficient. Probably there is a problem of lack of governance in many countries. Probably we are not giving enough attention to this problem.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different reasons, I think, but it's rather funny because if I have been looking at different research stations, you know, field stations where research colleagues, they do experiments. They find out what is the optimal combination for high yield, high crop. So they do different types of trials where they combine different sources of fertilizers with water, with whatever it is. And they can get very high yields, you know, in these plots. But then if you go outside, if you go to the farmers who are living next door, no. So the acceptance or the willingness and the ability of farmers and of private people, of households, of industries, of governments. I mean, we know what is the right thing to do often. We know what is the perfect way to do the best with our money, to do the best with our body, but we don't do it. So I think it's very good with the examples, with demonstrations, but it's very difficult task. Governance, yes, governance. For me, governance is the incentives, the different kind of rules and such thing from government, from organizations. They can of course do a lot of the education, of showing examples, such things. But then when we have to, we are human beings. And I think that there is a kind of difference between natural scientists, technology people, and social scientists in terms of how we look at the best development model, in a sense. I'm a social scientist by training. So I have been working together with people from hydrology, from chemistry, from biology. And when we sit down and discuss, you know, we realize that we have to some extent, well, to a large extent, overlapping views. But a chemist or a biologist, he or she, usually see things that I don't see, and they don't see the same thing as I do. So society is a very complex kind of system. So yes, it's not a good answer, but anyway,
it is good. It's complex, as we said. It's very complex.
But it's complex, yes. But one has to start somewhere.
We have to start somewhere, and I think, and maybe it's the main purpose of being here tonight, and I love to see so many young people here sitting in the audience, maybe spreading awareness of the problems, forming more aware consumers is the challenge of science, is the challenge of people that work in media. Some part is also the challenge that politics have. But I think it's very interesting what is happening in Sweden, that old people, we find out maybe old people are more aware of climate change than the Greta Thunberg generation. It's surprising. Greta Thunberg, I mean, Swedish, like
yes.
you are.
Yes. Yes,
What's going on? What do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I think that is a recent study that was presented actually when I've been here in Italy. So I think many of us are a bit surprised. We thought that the Greta Thunberg generation, the young generation, would be more concerned about climate change and such things as compared to us elderly people. But that's not the case, according to the surveys that have been done. And not only in Sweden, in other countries. And I think one possible explanation is that, the generation to which I belong, we have experienced scarcity problems. We have experienced that there was a lack of, there was not this abundance of things, of food and such things. So I think we are a little bit, old people are a little bit more conscious about that. For instance, I grew up on a farm. So I used to say, I know from where the food is coming. And I know what it takes to produce it. Now, for people who grow up in urban areas with a lot of money in their pockets, maybe or their parents have a lot of money that they give to them, they don't have the same kind of mental appreciation of these kind of livelihood conditions. So I think that is probably one kind of explanation that the as I mentioned to Rossana before, that is an interesting thing also. In Sweden now, we have a kind of definition of when do people start to become consumers. And when I heard about this study, I said, no, well, maybe when they are entitled to go to buy different, wine, to go to drive a car, that would mean that they would be consumed at the age of 18, 20 years. No? A consumer in Sweden today is defined as a person who has become 13 years. Because it's found that the young generation, the 13-year-old people, they have their own budget. They do the shopping online, they do the shopping in shops. So we see that the consumer attitude has gone down by the age. And I think that is a new situation, because if you are a consumer, that means that you're also, that means that you're buying, among other things, food, you're buying clothes, you're buying all kind of things. So you are also part of the environmental climate change kind of process, in a sense.
Yeah.
It's a new situation, actually.
And there's another interesting thing you mention in the book, that about our approach to climate change. We have very short memory.
That's right,
so
yes.
it's very hard to empathize. Empathize, does it make sense? Empathize with problems. We've seen the devastating effects of the floods in Emilia-Romagna. Well, according to what you write in the book, after a few days, this is gone. We forget about it.
Right, yes,
Climate
yes.
change is something that is going on far away from where we are. That's another big challenge that you have, that I have.
Yes,
we have.
yes, that we have. Yes, that's right. I think so. That's a meteorologist who's usually appearing on Swedish television. He's talking about the weather situation in Sweden, making forecasts about when we will have sunshine, rainfall. That's him. And he says that the human memory about climate is usually 3 days. So after 3 days, we have forgotten about the extreme events. 3 days.
Just 3 days.
That means that when we are dealing with when we are acting, we don't have a time perspective that is aligned with the natural processes.
We have some spare time left. We have 9 minutes, and Are there any questions from the audience? One hand there. Oh, many questions. That's great. Okay, now the microphone is coming.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the topic you have explained tonight to us. And I would like to ask you, what is your opinion on the happy degrowth? Because you have spoken about the fact that in the world there are too many consumers today, and the fact that we need to reduce consumption. And I know that the major part of economists don't like the happy degrowth theory. They think that the world needs to grow from an economical point of view, because we need more money for research and for decreasing the climate change effects. And therefore, I would like to ask you if you agree with this economist, or if you think that maybe not the entire happy degrowth theory, but part of it is correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very important, very good question. I think, I mean, it's true, of course, that that we need money, we need resources for both privately, for our daily life, but we also need, as you mentioned, for investments, the government or the industry. So I think there is, of course, in that sense, there is a need for a growth of the GDP or the economy. Now, I think that it's also, it is partly a matter of what type of growth we are thinking about. Because, I mean, the economy can grow also with, for instance, the production of energy through solar power, through windmills. So it's the matter, I think it, to a large extent, the matter of how we invest, how we utilize the economic resources that we have at hand. So I think we are in a situation now when we have a very big factory in the north of Sweden now, which should be one of the biggest factories in the world to produce batteries. Northvolt, I don't know if you've heard about it. We in the north of Sweden, we also have examples. We have attempts to produce steel without we don't. It's a new kind of methodology without having use a large amount of fossil fuels for the process. Now, those kind of events, the battery factory, the production of carbon-free steel, they cannot be done without having the economic resources and the scientific results. So in that sense, there is of course, I think, a need for a continuous increase of the economy. But at the same time, I think it's what is important also is that we spend the money, we spend our resources also on other things of the economy, which are, if we spend money on the burning of fossil fuels, it is increasing the greenhouse gas emission. So the same for us as private citizens, as private persons. If I have a certain amount of money, I can choose to spend the money on, I can go to theater, to read books, to do different kind of cultural events. It will have a low footprint. Or I can spend all my money on red meat, on different such things. So it is a matter of how, I think it is to a large extent a matter of the spending pattern and for the citizens, for private people, it's a matter of lifestyles also, I think. We must enjoy life. I have my colleagues in England, in UK, when we talk about food and such things, they say, maybe you know about that also, our friend from London. We should love food, but we should hate waste. That's a good expression. Love food, hate waste. I mean, in Italy, you have reason to love food.
Love food.
I don't know how you think about waste, but that it's a matter of it's a matter of lifestyle, I think, and it's a matter of innovations that we must be welcoming. Those innovations which are improving the efficiency and the use of natural resources for the human benefit and for human happiness. And I think it's possible, but it is a transmission that is not so easy. It takes time, I think.
Professor, I think we have another question, another hand raised down there.
The top 1% of people who are the richest 1% of people on the earth are consuming 80% of the resources, or they are causing 80% of the carbon footprint. Should that be ended? Should we find a solution for that?
Well, the question is how can we end it? I mean, I think, I mean, there are different kinds of carrots and sticks. I mean, we have taxes, we have educational programs, but I think we have a situation in both in Sweden and in large part of the world where you said the 1% is becoming more well off. And we have in Sweden, we have increasing segregation, we have increasing cleavages. But you know, I have a one quote I used to tell from the former EU commissioner.
Juncker. I love that.
You say it.
Well, he said, we know exactly.
He said Jean-Claude Juncker.
What we should, Jean-Paul Juncker, yes, this was the former president of the European Commission.
Yeah.
And he said, we are politicians, we know exactly what we have to do. But who is going to vote us on the next election? So, yeah, and you know, recently I had a chat with the former minister of the sustainable development of the Mario Draghi government, and he invested a lot of money in fixing pipes in southern Italy because there is a massive problem with water leaks. And he said, you know, I did it, but because I know it's important for my country, but I'm not going to gain any votes for doing such an important things, because fixing pipes is something you do underground. Nobody's gonna see that, you know. Pipes is about, you know, sewage and all the stinky stuff that flow underground. But yeah, politics have to change. So
yeah, no, that your
it's
example.
very hard.
Your example is very well taken. I think that is. I mean, politicians, they are not. They might know what to do perfectly well, but if they do it, they might not be credited for it.
But we vote them, and we are consumers, so we can choose every day what we eat, who we vote. We have more power than what we think.
I think we are both. I think I've written that also in the book. We are both voters and we are voters in the shop. I mean, we are voters. We go to the pool every 4th year or something like that. We select our political leaders, but then we are voters on a daily basis when we go shopping, when we do different things. So there is a very, I think, very interesting American economist. He was a big chap when I was at university. No, his name slipped now. But anyway, he's talking about that we have in society we have 3 choices. We have we can be loyal as consumers, as voters. We can be loyal to the system. We can. We follow the leaders. We accept what they say, what they propose. That is loyalty. And then he said that we have another choice, namely again protest or rejections. Then we start to shout, we write different stories in newspapers, we agitate in radios and such things. But then then that is the voice. I think he calls it the voice. So I think that he explains the very complex system in society, but a combination of people are voters in the political system, that we go to the polls every 4th year, something like that, and we are voters in terms of how we react to different types of policies in the daily life, and we are voters in the sense how we do the shopping and how we live at home. So we as consumers, we are not only voting every 4th year in the polls, we are voting more or less on a daily basis. That is important.
Professor, I think that's the best conclusion. Time is up. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. It was great to chat with you, to have this great debate about a very, very important topic. And yeah, we hope we left you with we'll leave you with some ideas and with some more awareness, okay? To be voters every day at the supermarket and when we go actually voting at the election. Thank you very much. Enjoy Trieste Next. Grazie al professor Jan Olof Lundqvist. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Rossana. You said before that we should have a pleasant or a nice evening, and I have enjoyed it very much talking to you, and I'm very happy to see so many. You know, in Sweden, if we had a presentation at 9 o'clock on a Saturday evening, it would not be like this. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much.